I said, hello, my name is Bree. Today's topic is about imperialism. Imperialism is a term that's been used for many centuries and is still present in today's world. There are three main aspects of imperialism: cultural, economic, and political. Today's project, I'll be talking about the cultural aspect of it all. Cultural imperialism consists of universalization of one's group experience and culture, and its establishment as a norm. There are dominant cultures and subordinate or minority cultures. In the case I'm presenting today, the American culture is dominant and the deaf culture is subordinate. The deaf culture is subculture to the American society due to having dissimilar beliefs, history, norms, and language. Any culture outside the American culture is considered wrong, and those outside of it will be pressured to assimilate to the correct culture. The deaf culture has their own language, beliefs, history, norms, values, and traditions. Behavioral norms like making eye contact and getting attention by hand waving, tapping, or other visual forms, and greetings. Values of the deaf is ASL, American Sign Language, vision, vibrations, interpreters, captioning, and most important, deaf schools. They also have their own local, national, and international organizations. This is an example for cultural, linguistic, and economical imperialism all in one. This is the Hutt family. The father, Danny, and two daughters, Catherine and Sarah, are partially deaf. The mom and middle child, Teresa, are hearing. I was happy to get the chance to interview them, being able to get the perspective of both the hearing and deaf sides of the family. Catherine, what conflicts have you had, regarding school? I know you have the speaker that you carry around with the teachers. Is there any conflicts with that? I know, with videos, some teachers forget to put it near or whatnot.
So I have a FM system which is connected to my hearing aid, and then the teacher wears it, and it sends everything, all the sound to my aids directly, and so that amplifies the sound, which is really helpful. But sometimes teachers make mistakes, and so sometimes they'll forget to put it next to the speaker when there's a video playing, or they forget to turn it off when they're in the hallway talking with someone, and so, or they'll forget to turn it on, and so I have to remind them and stuff. But it's not really anything I can't handle, I guess. Yeah.
And I think to piggyback off of that, Brianna, if you don't mind, is that technology is awesome for hearing impaired people nowadays, and there's so many benefits that they have. For example, she didn't have to sit in the front of the room. I mean, when I was in school, it was required, mandated that I had to sit in the first two rows because I didn't want to miss hearing what the teachers would say. Because some teachers, as you all know, speak really loud, and other teachers are very soft, and so to try to write and listen at the same time is pretty difficult, and so that's why the FM system has been such a big advantage for her as well as her sister.
Yeah, that's very smart. Okay, and then, so in some deaf schools, well, most, all of them, it's based on individuals' needs and curriculum based on what you could do, and some kids are placed in certain areas depending on that. And every teacher, every peer, every staff member knows ASL, knows how to speak, and knows if you had the system, they all know how to use it. So do you feel if you were to go to a deaf school that you would excel more than you would at a regular school?
Well, I mean, I think if I had grown up and was profoundly deaf as a child, and I was in that system, it might have been helpful communication-wise, but I don't think being in a mainstream school has hindered me, because teachers are required to know about that type of system. They don't know enough about it, but they are required to go to a meeting and learn about it. So I don't think it's detrimental that I wasn't fully involved in that kind of society.
And I think too that the American Disabilities Act really had a positive influence for the deaf and hard of hearing, because it mandated the school systems to ensure that they help people. Because it's so important that when an individual is diagnosed with a hearing loss or being deaf, that we help them at the earliest age possible. Because studies have shown that the earlier you identify and you're able to help them, the more educated they'll be and the better help in the long run, And so Gallaudet University, well-known deaf school up in Washington, D.C., we used to live up in that area. And I never went there, but I always heard great things about it. But there's so many schools nowadays that have great resources for people who are going not just to public schools, but also to college and universities. Lenore Ryan in our state of North Carolina, it's a great example of a school that it's a regular school, but they have a great services for the deaf and hard of hearing.
Well, that kind of goes along with my whole topic of the imperialism part. Do you feel like they include the people who are hard of hearing or disabilities into the American culture school system because they want to include you and want you to be more like them? Because it's not like you have your own section of the school. It's not like you have your own
Correct.
things. They're kind of forming you into the American culture. Do you feel thinking about it?
So there's this whole theory with the deaf and hard of hearing and mainstream, and an issue, and maybe you can ask about this when you interview other people with cochlear implant. Did they learn?
And then just one last question. So as a parent or yourself, did you feel the only option was to get hearing aids? Because that was an option, correct? You didn't have
Right.
to.
Right.
So-
She didn't have to get hearing aids.
I think
She could have gone without them, and
I couldn't have gotten a cochlear, correct?
you were not right.
You were
didn't-
not- yeah.
right.
Yeah,
you
I didn't think I was
couldn't-
eligible for
you-
that.
You don't have that profound of a
Right.
loss.
She could go without hearing aids. She would miss a lot.
Yeah.
And so to choose that for her was not really an option for us because we were going to do whatever we had to get her hearing aids. When she was due for her hearing aids, she actually got 2 hearing aids, and Danny was due for hearing aids, and he only got 1 because we couldn't afford
Yeah.
2 sets. So he just bought 1 because I was like, well, you know how to talk. She's going to learn how to talk.
Yeah.
So we're going to get her the aids. But there wasn't a choice for us to say, well, we're going to learn sign instead because
Yeah.
she did have hearing, so we could just amplify that.
And just real quick to go off of that. So if she was eligible for the cochlear, would you get it? How would you think about that?
Yeah, I think if she was profoundly deaf
Mhm.
when she was born, we would probably have done the cochlear. Only because just having her, it would have been more of a discussion maybe, but I think at that time we probably would have just gone
Well,
the
and-
Because
cochlear.
it's all about education, right? So if she's young, she's born, whatever, and she has a hearing loss or profoundly deaf, by not doing something, you're hurting her, or you're hurting a child in the long term.
Right.
And so there's more technology nowadays, actually, and I don't know the specifics behind it, but there's another type of surgery that you can get, and it's not a cochlear, because cochlear, you see the external, right? And there's a new procedure now where it's very intensive, but they can go into your ear canal and pretty much put in a system there so it's not visible to you or I. However, the problem with that is that if you jar your head, like if you get in a car accident or if you're playing a sport, and as you well know, concussion,
Yeah.
something happens to your head, it could impact your hearing as well.
Yeah.
So that stuff is newer, but I think definitely if we probably were at that time, we probably would have done a cochlear.
Well, I think also because we're more of a hearing family.
Right.
We're not like a deaf and immersed in the culture type of family.
Right.
So if we hadn't gotten a cochlear, maybe we would have gotten immersed in that. But since we all speak,
Right.
the cochlear
And I think too is the families, like your family, my family, we're all like, well, isn't there something she can do where she doesn't even have to wear hearing aids? Like, isn't there some sort of surgery to give her hearing back? They didn't understand. My family didn't understand.
Well, not my
Yeah,
family.
no, because but my grandparents were like, well, can't they do something then she can hear? And I was like,
It's
well,
not like
no.
when you break your arm, you can just put a cast on.
Yeah,
it.
right.
So.
So I think we would have pushed her into the oral language, right, and not sign.
Okay. And yeah, that's basically what this project was about. Just saying how hearing aids, cochlear implants, any of that kind of backs up the American culture. How that forms you more into the American culture of hearing instead of using visual signs or whatnot. So, but thank you all so much. This is Jennifer Cabe. I met her through church. She was born deaf and knows what it was like to live in a world that views her differently and attempts to assimilate her to mainstream culture.
My name is Jennifer Cabe. I was born deaf with spiritual malformations. I have hearing aids. Right now, I have a job. I work as a casework technician at vocational rehabilitation services, and I work primarily with deaf and hard of hearing. I'm also involved with, there is a deaf church. Now it just started. Okay, so yeah, I'm involved with my deaf community here in Wake County.
Have you went to a deaf school?
Yes, when I was very young, small, but as I got older, my mom made the decision to transfer me to a mainstream school. So I grew up in mainstream school and I graduated in a mainstream school.
Was that harder for you?
Yes, it was. I had an interpreter, but the issue that my mom had that time was because deaf schools do not have a great deaf education. That's the complaint right now. And they say that mainstream schools have a better education. There's a trade-off because you can get a better education, but then your social life really sucks.
Do you think you would have done better at that school if you stayed in it?
I think so because I would have had an environment where my teacher's son, I don't know if my education would have been improved, but I'm sure that my mom would have, made sure that I had a good quality education. The key for me, and it still is now, is having a community that I have access to. Having a culture and know who you are in your culture, and I didn't get any of that in mainstream.
So, is deaf culture important to you?
Yes, it is. Language is supported, culture is supported, being involved in the community with individuals who are like me and know what I've gone through. Because right now in the general community, it's really hard for me to participate in because I just can't hear.
What issues have you had with the American culture, with everyday things that you can do?
There's a whole bunch of things. My biggest issue is communication access, and actually in general have access to my community here. Like for example, what if I wanted to go to a movie? I can't just bring up on a computer or decide which movie I want to go. I gotta first make sure it's captioned for me. And not all of them are captioned, like especially that big movie that came out recently, the Star Wars, The Force Awakens. It was not captioned on opening day. So that means I had to wait until it was captioned, and typically that means.
So, do you think the American culture is taking over deaf culture and trying to make them the same?
Yes. The work of I just recently went to a conference, and it's called the Southeastern Regional Institute on Deafness, and we just had a presentation about that, and right now the term for that is called colonialism, and basically what the focus of the American culture is the focus on the ear and on the mouth, and they focus on if you can't hear, they want to this. To me as a deaf person, what is wrong with me? I don't see myself if there's anything wrong with me. I can read, I can drive, I've gone to college, I'm educated, But what's the difference between me and the next young person?
I agree. If you are allowed to get it, would you? Because culture-wise,
If I were qualified right now and my hearing aids are working for me, I would say no. Because hearing aids is not for me. They're talking about a $40,000 surgery, and right now I'm wearing like a $3,000 hearing aids.
yeah. And so you think the cochlear is to form you to the American culture?
Yes, I do.
Reason. That's what my whole project is about. How reasons like that want you to be like the American culture, to hear what this would be like.
Yeah, and I know that a lot of parents, that they have their first baby or whatever baby they have, and they find out their child is deaf, they still want their child to be the same, which I can understand that. But again, it just seems funny because in American culture, they also celebrate individualism. But when it comes to hearing loss, that's not accepted.
The next person I interviewed was Carla, a teacher at Eastern North Carolina School for the Deaf. It was important for me to interview someone at a deaf school to get another view of the deaf culture and how the American culture affects them. Okay, so could you first start off with telling how you're involved with the deaf culture in the community?
Okay, well, I'm actually a teacher here. I've been working here for 20 years. As a teacher, I've started as a kindergarten teacher. I've taught everything K-5, and now I'm a middle school math teacher.
And what grades does the school go to?
The school is K-12.
K-12, that's a okay. And what benefits do the children have going here instead of a mainstream school?
They're getting more direct communication, whereas in public school, we're going to use public school to mean regular education. They have to go through an interpreter. So they're not having direct communication either with their peers or with their teachers. So they're getting every bit of information secondhand, really. So if something happens and the interpreter misinterprets something, the kid is not getting the information that they need. Whereas here, they're getting direct instruction from their staff, and I'm going to end up signing part of this. They're going to end up with direct instruction from the staff, so that if there's a question, they're getting that information firsthand, and they can come back and ask the staff and find out. They can communicate with their peers on an age-appropriate level without having to go through an adult to facilitate that communication.
Let me ask one question. For the kids that you know in here, is there a big majority that have hearing aids or?
Most of our kids do wear hearing aids. Yeah. And we have several that do have cochlear implants.
And what's your view on that?
I have an issue with the cochlear implant only in that it's a very invasive surgery, and kids are implanted before they have the opportunity to make the decision as this is something they want or not. Like we last year had a child who his mom all of a sudden decided she wanted to get an implant. She talked to somebody at Chapel Hill who said, "Oh, an implant's the way to go, you gotta have it." Yeah. And the child was just, I don't want it. I mean, he would come to class in tears over it, very, very upset. I don't want one, I don't want one. So the teachers kind of contacted mom, and we sat down, the audiologist sat down, and it's kind of like, you know, we understand what you want, but A, at this point with this child's age, it's not appropriate. And B, your child is telling you, this is not something that's for me. I've been here, truly seen one or two successful implants in all the kids that I've seen implants. Because a lot of times parents are under the understanding or the view that I'm going to implant my kid and they're going to hear. They're going to be hearing, and it's going to be just like I hear, just like you hear, just like any normal hearing person hears, but it's not. And it requires intensive therapy, and that cannot just be at school or by the speech therapist. That has to involve the parents. And I have really only ever seen one or two parents take the time to really work with their child, and that child was very successful in implant.
I had the privilege of interviewing Cindy Cankle, a woman who works for a company with the intentions of spreading the gospel throughout the deaf communities. Her and her company travel from church to church to recruit others and get more people involved. She provided beneficial information to help me assist with my project. I was able to share some of the information throughout my project today.
So within that environment, you know, when I was with the kids that came from the deaf school, they were a lot more social within their culture.
Yeah.
You know, with one another, you know, using the sign language, and without not having the hearing culture, you know, kind of managing them. So they were, and also they excelled because many of them, you know, and many of the mainstream too go to college, but I just know that they have, because of their close cultural connection, they just excelled in their social skills better.
Yes, and I agree with that. I actually went to kind of going off of that, could you agree somewhat that American culture is imperialistic to the deaf culture based on what you've seen throughout the years?
Well, I don't know if they really mean to be. I mean, most people don't mean to be, but it comes across that way.
Yeah.
That's my opinion. You know, now I was going to mention...
Joyce Rigsby once said, "Deaf people are outsiders in a world controlled and conducted by those who can hear." Many churches and schools have the ability and materials to assess the needs of deaf people, though there is not enough personnel to plan and implement a plan for those with hearing loss. The American culture is not aware nor concerned about minority cultures. The deaf culture is constantly ignored and unrecognized by those of the hearing community. Aristotle said that those born deaf are senseless and incapable of reason, and the American culture is just backing up that opinion. The majority of people that are deaf belong to a different cultural group than their hearing parents. The biggest thing deaf people value are deaf schools. There, they could gain a better understanding of their culture, language, and their own identity. 10% have parents that are deaf, and the other 90% does not. The 90% of parents with deaf child do not know how to properly communicate with them, nor know anything about their culture, leaving them feeling isolated. This is why the need for deaf schools is so huge. They need the sense of family and others in their culture, then they could feel this through teachers, peers, or their dorm holders. A cochlear implant is an electronic medical device that replaces the function of the damaged inner ear. Unlike hearing aids, which make sound louder, cochlear implants do the work of damaged parts of the inner ear. There's been a lot of controversy regarding cochlear implants with culture. American Society for Deaf Children, National Association for the Deaf, World Federation of the Deaf, and International Committee of Sports for the Deaf, or the Deaf Olympics, are all organizations established to inform, make change, entertain, and get others involved. The American School for the Deaf was the first deaf school in the United States. It was created on April 15, 1817 in Hartford, Connecticut by Thomas Hopkins Gallup. The original goal of deaf schools is to teach and learn how to properly communicate with others. In order to understand one's culture, we must understand their language. In this case, deaf people use American Sign Language to communicate with one another and the community that knows the language. Sign language is a visual, non-vocal language. Sign language is used all over the world, though in many different forms. Sign language is not universal. Thomas Gallup, the creator of the first deaf school, created sign language. Deaf people value an environment that uses more visual sense of communication. Being able to be involved with the visual side of life gives them the opportunity to participate in every aspect of society. Now I'm going to list some pros and cons about the American culture allowing the deaf community to have their own culture. One pro being a part of the deaf community is really important for the deaf cultures, allowing them to learn about their own culture, beliefs, and themselves. Also being able to make friends and family grow with one another and help one another. Everyone in the deaf schools, churches, or other community aspects are all in the same boat. They all can relate to one another and know the struggles of being deaf. This also eliminates the need to explain one's reasoning for being in the school and being deaf. This takes a lot of stress off of the children, allowing them to better communicate and make friends, also not having to worry about being different. Having a different insight on life, not feeling that they are the odd ones out, feeling in a place where everyone is like them. Sign language is spoken throughout by teachers, administration, and peers. This allows the children not to worry about communication throughout the school. Extracurricular activities for the deaf people, including sports and clubs where the students interact with other deaf people. This creates a bigger community for a student and a better education based on their needs. School custom-fit curriculums to a child based on their abilities and needs. In other schools, ability isn't a factor in the curriculum. Everyone is treated the same. In deaf schools, this isn't the case. This also leads to strong deaf role models in the school. Some cons of the deaf community having their own culture and community aspects are limited exposure to hearing people, and this could hold back social growth and make children withdraw from social experiences. This leads to another con involving communication. In the real world around hearing people, we base our lives off of oral communication rather than visual. It is very costworthy to build schools and residential schools that keep kids overnight for the school year. Some states and countries do not want to invest in the schools strictly for the deaf, considering a smaller academic outcome. A lot more money has to go into running a deaf school, though there is a minimum of the amount of kids enrolled, somewhere between 100 to 300. The Governor Moorhead School for the Blind in Raleigh has 45 students currently attend, has a staff of 122, costs state $5.6 million a year to run, and the NC School for the Deaf in Moreton has 79 students attend, staff of 162, and operates cost of $8.7 million. Eastern NC School for the Deaf in Wilson has 75 students, 166 staff members, and it costs $8.1 million to run. This idea supported another con, being that not enough people are involved. Each school should only hold a certain amount of children, making it competitive to get into. This also interferes with American culture control of the deaf community, not fitting in with the deaf culture. The availability and location of the types of schools may remove deaf schooling as an option for families who don't live near one. There are not many deaf schools around. If something is not broken, don't fix it. Deaf people accept who they are, and hearing people should too. The first step we should take in fixing the issue on how we view other cultures is to be informed. We need to know how others are feeling and why. We not only need to help ourselves, but also others. We need to take part in coming together to find a solution to make sure everyone is happy and has the ability to succeed. The American society has the right idea, though to deaf people it comes off as insulting due to the fact of not being informed. We are attempting to help, but it doesn't always come off as that. These changes would help out many people and bring us closer together as a community.